So a very good morning to everyone. Venerable Sangye Khadro is still in Europe, so we'll continue today with review by community members. Today we're going to have a look at the perfection of joyous effort. So as usual, we'll begin with our visualizing the Buddha and having some prayers and reflecting on the four immeasurables. Then I will set a motivation and try and cover some of the content that she went through on this topic, but really wanting to open up for discussion and to use this space for us to talk about how the perfection of joyous effort applies to our personal experience and in our daily lives. Okay, so will someone kindly lead the prayers, or should I do it myself? Okay, sure. Yeah, I'm the usual chant leader for today, right? Okay. So let's just take a moment to connect with the Buddha in the space in front of us. And surrounding us, we also bring to mind all mother sentient beings in human form. And we'll lead them in taking refuge. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings not be separated from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. So let's spend a couple of minutes just putting our attention on our breath, setting aside thoughts of what we were doing before or plans for the future, and just coming back to our breath in the present moment. So for the motivation for our time together this morning, I wanted to share some good and inspiring news that came out of the typhoon that hit Taiwan and other parts of Asia sometime last week. And I think I sent this around to some people in the community, but not the guests and everybody else. So there was a serious typhoon, and there were heavy rains that hit the little island of Taiwan, and the flood waters burst a dam that proceeded then to drench, completely ruin a township called Guangfu. And I think people living in the town or one of the tribes nearby too all sent out messages on social media calling for help, just describing the situation on the ground. And the most incredible thing is that around that time, I think there was a 3-day weekend, 30,000 people showed up to help in that town. 10,000 of them were volunteers in disaster relief coordinated by Tzu Chi Foundation, it's a Buddhist organization that has extensive disaster relief networks and experience. But the other 20,000 people were just, ordinary people, including visitors to the island who had heard this call for help and were inspired to get on a train and travel south or east, I think, to help. And there were so many people trying to head to this town to help that the train service added 10 more trains in a day for that whole weekend. And so the trains were just packed with people showing up. And they helped in so many different ways, ranging from elderly grandmothers who cooked food and gave it out at train stations or to whoever needed the food, to little children there with their families, helping with the shoveling, clearing out debris, cleaning up. But I think what probably mattered most to the people in that town, apparently I think 30,000 people quadrupled the size of their population. It's just that incredible show of support and willingness to help. There were people posting on social media things like, I don't know you, but I want to help you. I just want to help. And people were just so delighted to be there together, cleaning up this huge mess of flooded buildings, mudslides, all kinds of buildings destroyed and drenched. So that to me was just such a beautiful example of this kind of joyous effort, right? That people would spend their long weekend helping others out. And that it kind of happened almost spontaneously. There was no kind of national directive saying everybody must go to this place. Just people saw the situation, and that deep wish that we all have to benefit others was awakened, and I'm sure inspired collectively, right? When people saw, my friends are going, my neighbors are going, why don't I do that too? Or in some cases, I read about one, it was like a group of young people that were part of a hip hop club that just thought, instead of rehearsing for a dance this weekend, why don't we all just go and help out? So this kind of, joyous effort is infectious this way. It really brings out the best in each and every single one of us. And I am inspired by how it was this big collective effort, because sometimes I feel so discouraged if I'm faced with a big task alone. But knowing that everybody has this kind of goodness and wish to contribute, and when we can tap on it together, incredible good things can happen. So today, let's see how we might explore how to spark this mental state in ourselves, knowing that it affects not just, it doesn't just inspire us to create virtue, but it's going to inspire everybody around us to do the same. And despite our limited capacities in this life, by coming together collectively, there is incredible benefit that we can accomplish for all beings that we are connected to. So with that in mind, let's engage in exploring this topic of joyous effort and see how we can continue to help each other along the path. Okay. So to begin with, I thought I'd just, go back to the basics of the root text that I believe we're all familiar with, but it never hurts to just hear these definitions again and again so that we have a sense of what we're working with. I believe in earlier reviews, we began with Venerable Lamsal looking at the perfection of generosity. Right? Venerable Jigme has looked at, Venerable Seppo did the perfection of ethical conduct during EML, and then last week Venerable Jigme looked at the perfection of fortitude. So we are in the fourth of the 6 perfections. And these are far-reaching states of mind that we're cultivating kind of after generating bodhicitta. Right? We already have this altruistic intention to benefit all sentient beings. So how are we going to do that? We're going to cultivate these incredible far-reaching states of mind that include as their object all beings and their benefit. Yeah, so that's where we are in the path. And I already see faces like, because it feels very far away and very big. Yeah, so on the most basic level, Lama Tsongkhapa refers to Asanga's bodhisattva levels, right? That explains joyous effort as a mind that is truly delighted to gather virtue and work for the welfare of sentient beings, right? As well as the actions of body, speech, and mind motivated by such a mind. Yep. I'm curious about why he emphasized, I don't know, for me, what sticks out is the word truly, truly delighted, as opposed to fabricatedly, or, you're gritting your teeth trying to get through it, right? I think Venerable Sangye Khadro talked about joyless effort, which we can come to later. Right, so that's the nature of joyous effort, right? It's a mind that's focused and delighted in gathering virtue and working for the benefit of others and all the body actions that follow from that. And then the subdivisions, which I'm sure we're all familiar with too, the first being armor-like joyous effort, right? So that's the state of mind that we're cultivating before even engaging in these virtuous actions, right? In the root text it says, when bodhisattvas undertake joyous effort, they don the armor of mental delight as a preliminary attitude before applying themselves to something. Yeah, so, they've looked at what they're about to do, right? And then they put on this armor of mental delight to protect the mind. Why? Because you're going to engage in something very vast and difficult for the benefit of others. And the example given here is, even if to attain Buddhahood, to eliminate the suffering of one single sentient being, they must abide exclusively in the hells for 100,000 times 10 million rounds of 3 immeasurable eons, they delight in it. Right, this is the point where we all kind of close the book and go to bed. No, I'm like, I mean, just that example itself, like, it's mind-blowing. What else is there to say? But at least in reviewing this definition of armor-like joyous effort, it was good for me to see that this is the preliminary attitude. This is like the attitude you have before you engage in the hard stuff. And it tells me that there's wisdom involved when we practice joyous effort, right? Bodhisattvas are not jumping into something just out of like, yeah, I'm going to do it. But they've thought about this. They're like, okay, this is going to be really, really hard. How hard? Well, they spelt it out. And it's like, you know what? I'm going to protect my mind. I'm going to be joyful in this. I'm going to make this commitment up front. And Venerable Sangye Khadro talked about how this armor-like joyous effort protects us from the afflictions. Yeah, because for sure that's going to come up if we're undertaking something so difficult. And then to kind of extend that analogy of donning the armor, right? The next subdivision of joyous effort is the joyous effort of gathering virtuous phenomena. And she was citing Geshe Sopa's commentary on how this is like picking up weapons, right? So here, gathering our weapons to, do spiritual battle. I'm always having a bit of trouble with these, warfare type analogies. But yeah, here we are gathering up our weapons, our tools, right, by applying ourselves to virtuous activities. And we're doing this to accomplish all 6 perfections. And we're creating the causes and conditions to, bring about great virtue in this world. And Venerable Sangye Khadro talked a lot about how the 6 perfections are both virtues and antidotes. Yeah, and I think we went through in the class, like, when we practice each of these virtues, they automatically help us to overcome the afflictions as well. So in that sense, you're generating the merit and also purifying the mind at the same time. And then the third subdivision is the joyous effort of benefiting sentient beings. Yeah, so you've prepared your mind, you have your weapons, right? You know what you're supposed to practice, and then you go straight out and you actually put generosity, ethical conduct, fortitude, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom into practice while benefiting sentient beings. Okay. So because of this, how it's like tied around this analogy, I thought to open up at the beginning just to explore what are some of the analogies or stories that help us to understand or even generate this mind of joyous effort. And I thought to go in this direction because I see that in a lot of the Buddha's sutras and treatises, right? Because we're dealing with these huge, very abstract, almost states of mind, whether they're afflictions or they're virtues. We can't see our mental state, so to speak. So the Buddha uses so many analogies to try and help us understand what exactly we're trying to cultivate internally or to kind of put into action. Yeah. And also these are states of mind that are so contrary to our worldly ways of thinking. Yeah, so I personally find analogies or stories quite helpful. So while you're thinking about that, about what analogies or stories have helped you to understand or generate joyous effort, I just want to offer some that we might be familiar with as well. If we look at Shantideva's Engaging in the Bodhisattva's Deeds, chapter 7, I guess the very famous one is of practicing joyous effort is like, the elephant tormented by the noonday sun will dive into the waters of a lake. And likewise, I must plunge into my work that I might bring it to completion. Right, so the idea of, I don't know if the analogy here, what the noonday sun is, but perhaps, you're so tired of the miseries of cyclic existence that it's like, yes, I'm going to practice the path to bring benefit both to myself and others. Woo! Yeah, but I guess the analogy emphasizes the joy aspect of it, right? I mean, when the armor light is like, okay, this mind's got to be tough. Yeah, you're gonna, hold up against all difficulty. But here it's emphasizing the joyful aspect, like, hooray! I'm gonna do something virtuous, and it's actually going to relieve my suffering and that of others as well. Shantideva also offers us the one of, just as flaxen threads waft to and fro, impelled by every breath of wind, so all I do will be achieved, controlled by movements of a joyful heart. This was so helpful for me when I first read it. Just this idea of joyful effort, like a cotton ball, I guess, blowing on the wind, going from place to place. Because I had always thought of joyous effort as kind of like, I'm confusing it with pushing most of the time. So it's like, what do you mean like a cotton ball floating, when I'm joyful, I think, but I'm like, it's got to get done. It's like, wait, I think that is not joyous effort. Relax. Yeah. So yeah, this kind of ease, right? Like, okay, this is the naturally virtuous thing to do if you have the right motivation. So why not? Blown along by joy. And of course, we're familiar with the one from Lama Zopa Rinpoche who says, Bodhisattvas see problems like ice cream. Right? So that's joyous effort, right? Like, oh, yummy, a chance to improve my practice. Right. And I thought too about one from Marshall Rosenberg, right, who talks about making requests. He calls them hungry duck requests in nonviolent communication. I think the story behind it is that when he first started teaching his sons to make requests, when he was making requests of his children, they always heard it as a demand because it's coming from dad, right? So he observed how they love to feed ducks at the park. So he told them, please only do this if you can do so with the joy of feeding a hungry duck. Right? So that's his definition of fulfilling a request. Please don't do this because you're afraid to be punished or you're gonna be shamed or whatever it is. You should only do this if you have the joy of feeding a hungry duck, which honestly I think is quite a not so easy, I will say, in terms of fulfilling requests. So those are some of the analogies that came to mind from my own experience or that I had heard of. I wonder if there are others that work for you or that you apply in your own mind that you don't mind sharing with us. Folks online are welcome to share too. Venerable Jigme.
So sometimes it doesn't sound like it's on.
Oh, it's on. It's
okay. Sometimes I think about just in terms of what is the result going to be. So if I'm low energy or, having some fight in my head about doing something that would help others, then I think about what the end result would be, and that brings some joy to my heart. So the effect, that works sometimes.
Venerable Thubten, who has a lot to tell us about joyous effort from the working on the Buddha Hall. You should come here right now.
I think what always inspires me is when I hear Venerable Children or Venerable Khadro talk about how they got to India and what propelled them through their early years of study in Nepal and India as, first of all, young women as lay practitioners and then young nuns. And their experiences are 180 degrees different from ours here. They had to try. Going to India in the 70s was a deal. And then getting there, the nutrition that they had was really substandard, even though everyone who was trying to get them fed was doing their best, but nothing compared to what we're eating here at the Abbey. Their accommodations were so modest. I don't know if that's the right word. But, dealing with the insects, dealing with, food contamination. And here, we have these beautiful meals that are served 3 times a day at the Abbey. And then just being, women in a culture where women and men are not on equal footings. And the fact that there was hardly any books at the time written that were authentic books on Dharma in English. The teachings, they had to depend on translators, and in those days, translation into English was still developing too, so they got what they got. And at the same time, with all these challenges and many more, and visa problems and the whole works, those two were just so thrilled to be ordained and to study with these magnificent teachers that all these other obstacles were like, yeah, okay, but I'm learning the Dharma from these magnificent teachers. That inspires me. So when I start having this cranky, complaining mind, here, it's like, come on.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so thinking of the potential benefits and looking at what our teachers, fellow practitioners have been through, yeah, no, that's definitely a big source of inspiration. I love reading biographies during retreat, especially. I think many people here do that. Yeah. Others? Venerable Thubten's example reminds me of, I read Geshe Rabden's, I think it was Geshe Rabden's biography, in which I think he talks about how he was so homesick when he was sent to one of the 3 great seats, the monasteries to study at. He was very homesick, and he decided, you know what, I miss my root teacher, I'm going to walk back. Because it takes like 3 months or something. He had to walk to Lhasa from his tiny little village. And it was this crazy journey where he had to, get on a pulley and get pushed across the river and that sort of thing. So he walks there, yeah, and then he's very homesick, and he decides to walk back. And he gets back, and his teacher is just so upset that he walked. The teacher's like, I'm sending you to one of the best monasteries to study. What do you mean you're homesick? So he had walked all the way back, gets reamed out by his teacher, who's like, you're going to go back. I don't care, you're going to walk right back because we need you to go study and, fulfill your Geshe degree and whatnot. Yeah, he cried. He cried in the I'm like, wow, okay. That's what people went through. Venerable Dechen and then Venerable Chini.
I guess as a nurse in aged care, it really inspired me with my work when you'd see the joy in your patient's heart, when you do something really positive for them. I guess one thing I always enjoyed doing, I would get inspired by, you'd help somebody with a shower. And, they would be so grateful. And also it was a tandem team. They helped and they did their top part, I'd do the bottom part. And we'd end up with a great result. They'd be clean and comfortable and so grateful for the support. That sort of thing inspires me.
Thank you.
I never classified the story as joyous effort, but it is, clearly. The story that Master Jinhu told us about the Chinese master whose name you know, but I don't, because I don't remember Chinese names.
Empty Cloud, I think.
Yeah,
Xu
okay.
Yun.
Yeah. Who restored torn down monasteries all throughout China, and his during or after the
Before.
Cultural Revolution.
I
Right,
think
right. It was
before.
because sure enough, he restored these old temples, and sure enough, they're torn down again right after him. And in the meantime, his disciples are saying, "Why are we continuing to do this?" He says something like, "It's our responsibility, and when they're torn down, we'll build them back up again to keep the Dharma going." I think of that often with regards to our challenges that we face here. But it is definitely joyous effort that's propelling him to do that. And I also think of Geshe Kelsang, Deki Wangmo. Not Kelsang Wangmo. Deki Wangmo. Delek.
Oh, Geshe Delek Wangmo.
Delek
Geshe Ma
Wangmo.
Delek Wangmo,
Yeah. And her prostrations all the way from her faraway province to Lhasa. And then when they didn't get met in Lhasa, they just kept going to India and got the heck out. It's an astonishing story of perseverance, and it was joyful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, for people who aren't familiar with this, Geshe Ma Delek Wangmo, who came to be with the Abbey last year for at least a month, she told us her life story, but any of the life stories of some of these Tibetan monastics who've gone into exile. Yeah, and she talked about how they prostrated from Litang in Kham, all the way to Lhasa. And then, when they were turned away from Lhasa, then they continued prostrating and made their way into exile. Throughout the winter, on the ice, whatever conditions, mud all over yourself, you just prostrate, full body prostrations all the way. Yeah. And she was like, it was just like the most normal thing to do. We were just like, wow. She's like, a lot of Tibetans do this. Our teacher was doing this. It's like, this is normal. We make merit. Like, what? We were saying how, if I were gonna make that pilgrimage, I would have a film crew and maybe write a book about it, right? Be like, I prostrated all this way. And it's like zillions of Tibetans do this. It's not a big deal. Yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to share briefly 2 stories that really inspire me before we go on. One of them is the story of the mountain man from India. I don't know if you've heard of him. His name is Dashrath Manji. I don't know how I came to hear of him, but he was a low-caste laborer who lived in a little village near Bodh Gaya. And his wife fell from a mountain, and she could not access a hospital in time because they were living on this mountain and there was just no road to access the hospital. And so she died, leaving him with 2 very small children. And he was, I think, working in a coal mine. And so, of course, he was devastated. But at the same time, he didn't want others to suffer. So he decided he would carve a path through the mountain by hand. And he did. It was 390 feet long, 30 feet wide, and 25 feet deep, eventually. And he took 22 years with a hammer and a chisel. And he just kept going at it. And people, of course, were like, "You are crazy," right? And at some point, he got arrested by the police, I think, for what he was doing. But by then, a lot of people were in support of what he was doing. He plowed the fields in the day sometimes and worked by night because he was not getting money from this. But he was just determined to help the people of his village because they were the lowest of the low caste. The government's not coming to help you yet. I mean that he got arrested for trying to do this. I don't think he could have called his representative, so to speak. So what do? You build the road yourself. So of course after this, it was a huge inspiration to a lot of people. He got his face put on a stamp. But I think his grandchildren are still extremely poor. Yeah, not that much has changed, but just what he did, though, is inspiring, right? Just the dedication that took, and that he was driven by this wish for others not to go through the same kind of pain that he did, losing his wife in a way that is entirely preventable. Yeah, so he chiseled his way through this mountain. And the other story I often think about is Dr. Paul Farmer. As you know, I'm a giant fan. But how he would walk for 3 hours to go look for a patient, just to check if they had taken their medication. And in doing so, model this kind of behavior for all his community health workers. He created a nonprofit called Partners in Health that started with providing medical care in Haiti, and then it's expanded to many places, including Rwanda. But he cares for his patients, that's one. But it was also to make a point, like, don't tell me that there's no car access, so you're not going to go check on this person, and you're just going to let them not take their meds and die, We are going to find a way. He's like, I'm going to do it. So he walks 3 hours to look for this person, make sure they're taking their meds, walks back. Yeah. But I think, and some of us might think, all right, that's an inefficient way of using your time. But no, right? It inspires his whole team. It sets the example. And now, like a central piece of their work is accompanying patients, making sure that someone is there to take care of them. And I guess these examples really stand out for me because it reminds me that joyous effort is fueled by love and compassion. That's the real deep driving force, right? Because without that deep love and compassion, wanting others not to suffer, doing whatever you can within your capacity, you're not going to keep going. Yeah, these people were just coming, their love and compassion was helping them to see things in such a different way. They weren't like, I'm just one person, what can I do? Right? There are all these obstacles. They're like, no, I don't want others to suffer. What is within my capacity? I'm just going to do my best and apply myself. Then I feel like no matter what other things the world puts up, right, and tells you this is impractical, this is silly, because your motivation is so clear, it's like this is going to alleviate the suffering of others. It just helps you to have that very strong through line. Yeah. So these are examples that, remind me of that. If we're very, very clear that this is coming from a place of love, compassion, and will bring great benefit, why not keep going? And then it has a huge ripple effect on other people. So after the nature and subdivisions in the root text by Lama Tsongkhapa, then we go on to how to generate this mental state in the mind stream. And here he offers just various quotations. And I guess it seems kind of general in terms of what to do. So I thought here, again, we should discuss specifics from our own experience and see if that helps us. So first, as with any mental state we try and develop in the Buddha Dharma, we reflect on the benefits of a virtuous mental state. That seems like the step one for any virtuous mental state, right? Like there must be benefits. And here we are told joyous effort helps us to accumulate merit, to purify obstacles. We will attain the state of irreversibility, right? So we won't fall back from the bodhisattva path. Apparently, it brings mundane and transcendental attainments. That's the part I'm interested in. And that the last part, it says, beings will benefit you, which seems, I guess, a natural outflow of putting in a lot of effort to benefit others, right? Like, then they're grateful and they naturally want to help you in return. Yeah, but that's not why we're doing it. So yes, the question I sent out was, what mundane or bracket transcendental benefits have you received from cultivating joyous effort? And just looking in my own experience, I would say just moving here, a very mundane benefit I've had from cultivating joyous effort was just learning a lot of new skills that I absolutely never expected. I'm guessing all of us have had that experience. Like honestly, I never ever thought I would learn to make things, like make a website. That was one of the first things I learned. Yeah, I had to learn WordPress to get Venerable's website going. I really thought after ordaining I would never check my email again. That just hasn't happened. I'm like, oh, I'm learning this thing called WordPress. All right. It helps to create a website to share the Dharma. Why not? Yeah, do it. I learned to cook. I used to only cook for 1 or 2 other people. When I came here, cooking for 8 people was like, huh? And then recently I cooked for 80 people. So proud of myself. My mother said, I'm so proud of you. Like, inconceivable. I cooked for 80 people, can you believe it? Not alone, with a lot of help. But, I learned to drive, which also, I think only one woman in my family drives. So, yes, that is a landmark in my family. I know this is totally normal for the rest of you. I can drive. And yes, and translating, which I never ever thought I would do. Yeah. And one thing that helps me a lot with learning these skills and offering service at the Abbey is, I always think, okay, if I'm tired and resentful, I'm like, well, how would I feel if I were doing this for 1 man and 2 children? much worse, I will say, right? Right? If I were cooking for one man and two kids, or if I were scrubbing the toilet for them, I'd be like, forget it, you come home and do it yourself, right? Like, okay, I'm doing this for 21, 22 practitioners, sure, okay, sure, I can find it in myself. Tired, but definitely beneficial. That's 22 people who are practicing the Dharma, why not? And then even more, 80 to 100 who come, then yeah. So I feel that's been a huge, that's what makes all the difference for everything we do. Yeah, we're doing it for the 3 jewels or a community of people who are gonna take this to the next level, not some ungrateful child or who's gonna tell you that they don't wanna eat it anyway. Sorry for everybody else who serves ungrateful children. Well, anyhow, yeah. So what about you? What mundane or transcendental benefits have you received? Venerable Jigme.
Well, what's so interesting in how you're describing this is this idea that we come here and we learn new skills, which brings a sense of esteem, and I can do more than I ever thought I could, which is kind of for me, the basis of I get to work with my mind to have a pleasant or joyful experience every day. That's on me and for me and with me. So to think about it kind of in that way, how Venerable Children in her brilliance challenges us to do things that we, like you said, never thought we would be doing. And then we understand the benefit of that for others, but for ourselves. So it's this interdependent process that then opens the heart to start doing things with joyous effort, because that's pleasant for our experience and is helpful for whoever we're directing it toward. So just that whole process is quite brilliant, actually.
Venerable Seppo.
I appreciate Venerable's emphasis on seeing the kindness of others, because in that practice, in doing that, in those moments when one can do that and remain aware of that, then naturally there's this wish to give, and it's from a joyful place, wanting to repay the kindness of others. So that's one big thing. And then also remembering back to the years that I studied in Australia, one of the things that made that study so joyous was studying with others and doing reviews and debating with each other, memorizing with each other. It made it fun and funny, and some of those things stick because I remember some funny things someone said. So study can become so joyful, when we're doing it with others.
Venerable Ngawang.
I think related to that, offering service Saturday is such a good example of joyous effort. And what I've been struck by is, during the day goes by so quickly because we're all so happy to be helping each other and we're working harmoniously together. And then at the end of the day, when we dedicate the merit, often the coordinator says, well, we created, 5 stacks of firewood, we moved this many logs, we split this many logs, we rolled this many mantra, we cut this many apples, just to see how much can be accomplished when we work together. So it's again what Venerable Jigme said, we can do way more than we think we can. And on another note, I was speaking with some people after the Nune retreat recently. And again, looking back on that experience, it was again this thing of, wow, we did something we didn't think we could do, or we did it and we stayed joyful when we thought it might be very difficult, So it was this sense of accomplishment and confidence that comes when you persevere and then you look back and rejoice.
Yeah, and your example of offering service Saturday reminded me of, was it when our friends came from Boise? Was it the Treasure Valley Dharma friends? And they were doing all kinds of things like moving rocks and whatever. And someone said, you know, if I had to do this for my own house, I'd hire someone. There's no way I'm going to be moving rocks on a Saturday for my own house. But all of us here together, doing it for the Abbey, knowing this will prevent fires at this place and protect people, I'll do it. I'm more than happy to move rocks. And they just had this happy mind. Yeah, so coming back to our motivation, right, and the collective positive energy, it just drives us all along. Seichen.
Venerable, something I've noticed about times I've been able to apply joyous effort to what I'm doing is it also uplifts others and helps them get through very difficult situations. Like, I distinctly remember us one time when I was in U.S. Army basic training, and it was during red phase where they're like really mean, and so we were all like doing push-ups in our bay, and like I happened to be across from somebody in the aisle, like we were kind of facing each other, and I just like looked up to them and kind of like playfully stuck my tongue out at them. And it completely changed like their disposition. Like they were like struggling and like almost on the verge of tears before I had done that. And then just doing that very simple little gesture, like it gave them a lot of like physical strength and energy to be able to like get through that moment and subsequent moments throughout the training.
Yeah, what a huge benefit. Yeah, just inspiring each other to go along. And I was just thinking, it's the total opposite of competitiveness. Right? Somehow when you're there with that kind of good virtuous motivation, because competitiveness is like, oh my God, they did so much better. Oh, the rest of us are lousy, or like we'll never keep up. And somehow everyone gets collectively discouraged. Yeah, it's like, oh, forget it. Okay, you do it yourself. Rest of us, we're irrelevant. Versus, oh, cool, we can all do the same. Let's just all jump on board and keep going. Yeah, this person with their joyous effort is inspiring us to persevere in virtue. Wow. Yeah. Other thoughts here? No? Yes, Venerable Lam.
Something that I notice is when I can have joyous effort when doing things that aren't necessarily my favorite tasks, that it's enjoyable. I think about the benefit that it's bringing to others and how I'm supporting those around me, and by extension everything the Abbey is doing. And then it's like that task, it doesn't leave such a, kind of dreadful impression on me. So I'm more likely to, embark on it in a timely way, hopefully in the future as well.
We're getting into laziness. What is the other part? I wanted to say that, this is probably like its own separate long topic, but just offering service as the heart of a big piece of our spiritual practice and what that has done for each of us, I'm sure. Just like when I think about how much I hated learning to drive and how, like, I don't know about you, like anytime I'm asked to do something I don't know how to do, I get to see all my bad habits, all my the go-to afflictive response, right? Ranging from avoidance, let's ask pretending like I didn't hear that I had to do this thing, pass it off to someone. The worst one though was learning to drive. I make jokes if I'm afraid. I think that laughing will help us get through it, but it doesn't help when you're trying to drive. That's all I'm gonna say. There was one time I was in the car, Venerable Jigme called me out on this, I think. I'm like freaking out, making jokes. She's like, can you just focus on the road? This is not helpful. I'm like, that's true. That's like the #1 way I try and deal with fear, If we can joke through this, it will go away. It doesn't work. Yeah, it could kill us. So that was one. Yeah, avoid, don't do it. And then Venerable set a deadline, you must learn to drive by this date. What was so helpful was Venerable Jigme helping me to reframe it as part of my practice, saying, if people can attain Buddhahood, you can learn to drive. It's like a step-by-step thing. It is, like Buddhahood is this huge, vast, difficult goal, right? If there's steps to get there, you can follow the DMV manual. Like, that's true. Okay. So, you know, whatever it might be. Or I think sometimes it's good preparation for death too, right? It's like you're gonna be called on to do something you really don't know how to do at short notice, and you can't get away. What are you gonna do now? I'm not gonna be able to joke my way through this one. That much I know. So yeah, so I think our offering service, being called to do all kinds of things we don't know how to do, is incredible practice. Yeah. Okay. So I thought now then we'll switch gears then, because the next half of, anytime we learn this topic about joyous effort, right, we look at the benefits, and then we've got to look at what gets in the way, right, to overcome the obstacles. And always a huge chunk of the teaching on the perfection of joyous effort is about its primary obstacle, which is? Yes, which we know too well. But it was so helpful to have Venerable Sangye Khadro kind of refresh the technical definition of laziness, which comes from volume 3, Samsara, Nirvana, and Buddha Nature. I mean, I don't know, this word laziness, it's I don't know about you, it has its own emotional baggage for me. It has to do with my mom kind of being like, you're so lazy. So it's like derogatory. I feel so, like, I'm just on the phone with my friends. I'm not being lazy. I'm just doing what I like to do. Excuse me. You know, you're so lazy, blah, blah, blah. So I just kind of shut down when I hear this word even. I'm like, I don't want to deal with it. You're just insulting me. I know what I'm doing. But okay, here's the actual definition of what we're dealing with. Laziness is a mental factor that, having firmly grasped an object offering temporary happiness, either does not wish to do anything constructive, or although wishing to, is weak-minded. So that's all it is. Yeah, I mean, it's taking delight in something totally non-virtuous, or it's taking delight in something 100% worldly. Yeah, it's just that the mind is completely attached to the appearance of this life, happiness in the here and now. And as a result of that attachment, it doesn't want to do the thing that brings long-term virtue, or it's like, what's the point, right? Who's it gonna benefit anyway? Or it does a little bit and it's like, it's better that I go eat some chocolate, and so forth, yeah. So coming back to that, it's just a reminder, right now I'm attached to the happiness of this life. That's what's getting in the way, yeah. Maybe that helps me instead of being like, you lazy bum, and, you know, getting into it. I think so, the word lazy triggers a lot of self-criticism for me. Yeah, so be like, okay, you're distracted. You're completely fixated on happiness of this life. Yeah. So of course, we reflect on the faults of laziness, right? And the ones listed here are all in relation to our spiritual goals, right? So when we're lazy or we're fixated with happiness of this life, awakening is far away. Generosity and wisdom do not exist. Welfare of others does not exist. It is the foundation of afflictions. There was a very good discussion in the class with Venerable Sangye Khadro, you know, getting people to think like, really? Is laziness behind all our afflictions? Yeah, we can see that, right? Especially when we don't want to apply the antidote. It's like, it's too hard, or it's much nicer to be stuck in my, you know, whatever mentality that I'm used to, my old affliction, that old pattern. Yeah. And then as a result of laziness, there's no dharma in the mind stream. All right. So before we dig deeper into the 3 types of laziness, I want to share this story that for me is a great summary of the 3 types of laziness. And I first read it in Gelek Rinpoche's commentary on Shantideva's Engaging in the Bodhisattva Deeds. Yeah, so we have 1 volume per chapter in the library, and he's such an engaging teacher who knows how to talk to Western students. I never met him or heard him teach in person, but reading the commentary is always a great delight. So in this section, he tells the story of the 18th century Tibetan master, the great master Gongtang Konchok Tenpe Trunme. Right, so his disciples were begging for him to write a biography. And he said he had nothing to say. So they kept pressing and asking him, and finally he gave in. And, you know, Gongtang Rinpoche says, all right, I'm going to tell you my biography. And so he announced that, and many, many people came all over to hear it. Then he said, for the first 20 years of my life, I kept on thinking, I am a kid, I am a kid. Then for the next 20 years, I kept on thinking, I should do something, I should do something. Then the next 20 years, I kept on thinking, I couldn't do it, I couldn't do it. That is how I wasted 60 years. That is how I wasted my life. That is my autobiography. So of course he's being humble, yeah. It's Gongtang Rinpoche who produced, I think, like 12 volumes of teachings and whatnot. But I thought it was just such a great summary of the 3 types of laziness. Yeah, I am a kid. Yeah, I still have time. I'm young. I'm gonna do something later. Right, the laziness of procrastination, as we know. And then next, I should do something, but I'm so busy with other stuff. I've got to make money, I've got to, I don't know, get a good reputation, whatever. I've got to be well known in the world, right, when we're caught up with all the worldly, meaningless activities. And then the last part, the laziness of discouragement. Oh dear, I couldn't do it. And then your whole life just passes. It's scary. And I'm seeing sober faces in the audience, mainly because I'm sure we've met people who've expressed that, right? Or seen it in ourselves, or just met people who have, regret so much how they use their time. So, I thought here to pause and just to see what thoughts people had on the 3 types of laziness, which one has been a strong obstacle in your own Dharma practice, and how did you overcome it? Before we get into what we know from this text, I'm guessing we'll cover it by our sharing, but let's see. Yeah. Venerable Thubten.
Usually I think my problem is being too busy, but that isn't the main driver often. If I really look, it's procrastination. And there's something I don't want to do. It might be even something that I kind of like, or I really like. But my mind puts up all these kinds of reasons. Mostly it's like, I don't want to do it, or I don't want to do it now. And so I put it off. And then it gets into a squeeze situation. Then I have to do it, and I'm resentful. And I don't like doing it. But what I've discovered is if I can just get around this mind that says, I don't want to do it now, I decide, you know what, you are going to do it now. You're going to do it now, and you're going to do it right now. And then I get into it, and I enjoy it, because I know I'm not going to be squeezed. Like facilitating safe. I can always say, I'm too busy. I'll do it a little bit later. I'll do it closer to when all the things are due. And that is not a recipe for enjoying this process at all, which I really, really enjoy. I like facilitating safe. And so I just get on it, and I make myself do it earlier in the week so that there's this luxury of time, and then I can enjoy it. And it's my mind that's the biggest problem.
I think that's the tricky piece for me too, with the procrastination for, quote, things I enjoy. As in, I get into, so for me, working with procrastination has been seeing perfectionism is tied to it for me. I don't know about other people. It's like, I love this so much and it's got to be so good that I get paralyzed to start. I want this to be so good. I think the first Vajrasattva retreat I sat became like that. It was like every mantra has to be so perfect and meaningful. It took me 1 year to finish that retreat because I'm like, I must do this really well and purify, and it's gonna be so meaningful and now it was good to at least suffer through that for that one retreat and realize you can't do retreat like that. That is not doing retreat. That is an affliction. And it's not helping you to finish your commitment. Instead, if have a more realistic view and some joy, helps you to move a lot quicker. Yep. Venerable Dechen.
There was a bit of a fad in FPMT for a while there when we'd ask our guru Kabzai Zopa Rinpoche for what do we need to do? What are the practices, the things we need to do? And he would give people huge numbers, this many prostrations, that many water bowls, and I got a fairly hefty prostration one, and I love prostrating. I've always loved prostrating, and this was probably late 30s, early 40s. I've got heaps of time. No need to count them now. You'll get onto it. Don't worry about it. So here I am at 60, 65, and still doing them. And that is why I do retreats now that have prostrations in them. And so I do like doing the retreats, but it's mixed with that motivation that I've got to get this number done. That I was a bit lazy earlier on in the piece.
Venerable Deki, and then Venerable Jigme afterwards.
I guess one of my biggest one has been discouragement at the beginning. And I think actually, honestly, how I really worked with it is just by being here and over time putting in the effort and the practice and then seeing my growth. That it wasn't, just trusting the process and over time just putting in the effort, showing up again and again and again. And then looking back over time and seeing the result of it has been huge. So.
Well, to be perfectly honest, sometimes it is my attachment to reputation that gets me off my butt to do something. and so then I had to learn how to not beat myself up about that, but see the full process and to see how I felt after I did things so that I could see the benefit of it. And slowly then turned my mind to, I could just jump over that part of the reputation thing and do it from a heart-open, joyous effort place. So.
Thank you so much for getting into the mixed motivations that we all have. So before we get there, I wanted to come back to your points, but I think the first group of sharings, we've pretty much covered that first number 1 obstacle, where Lama Tsongkhapa says, right, there are 2 adverse conditions for joyous effort. Right, one is seeing that one is able to accomplish virtuous dharma, but not engaging in it. Yeah, and that's split into 2 parts. One is the laziness of procrastination and the laziness of attachment to meaningless activities. But I thought very much what we all shared about procrastination is that we see we are able to accomplish these things. Yeah, that's how it's different from the laziness of discouragement, right? It's like we know we can do prostrations, or we know we can facilitate the course, or I know I love doing retreat, yay. And then stuff gets in the way, right? Either thinking, I'll have some time to do it at some other point, and you don't. Or, I'm going to make it so perfect that I'm just going to take however long I need, and so on. Yeah. So that's one piece, right? That's the procrastination. And the antidotes to that, as the text tells us, instead of attachment to our reputation, is doing the first scope meditations, reflecting on our precious human rebirth, death, and the lower realms. And in reviewing this, I suddenly felt really relieved. Like, I don't have to do some special other thing to overcome laziness, per se. It's built in to the Lamrim. It's like Lama Tsongkhapa knows this is our number 1 obstacle as beginners. Fixation with this life. Fixation with temporary happiness. So what's going to help us with that? Remembering you could die anytime. You really don't know. This is a very precious opportunity. It disappears like this, and it's very hard to come by. Very few beings have it. And if you fall to the lower realms, it's going to be a very long time before we get another precious human rebirth, right? So I don't know, maybe that's my it's not like super hard. It doesn't take super extra effort to overcome laziness. Just show up for practice and do the Lamrim, right? The beginning meditations help us to overcome this idea that I have some time at some point to practice what I'm capable of. It's like, no, I don't. Yeah. Apply my mind to accomplish virtue when I can. Yeah. So before we get into discouragement, the next one is attachment to meaningless activities, right? We can accomplish virtuous things, but we don't do them because we think at some point later I'll do it, I still have time, or we're just totally distracted by worldly things, right? So the example given is, you're the busiest of the busy, being the bowling champion. I like Venerable's one, you're the chair of the bonsai club or something, you're the expert at doing bonsai. So all your energy goes into totally meaningless things when you could instead be putting your mind to doing something virtuous. Yeah. So that's the trick with the attachment to reputation. Yeah. If we follow that, we could be doing a lot of other pointless things. So I think in the sharing during Venerable Sangye Khadro's class, some people brought out examples of being caught up with kind of their abbey duties, I think, as the attachment to busyness. And then there was some debate about that, because we do have to do things to keep the monastery running, right? So this is where I think it gets into the mixed motivation piece. how do you know that you're doing what's virtuous and needs to be done versus when you are caught up with worldly activities or distracted, actually? Do you know? I have a really hard time, I will say, because my reputation stuff gets mixed in. Often I only catch it when it's really too late, in which I have been working till 11:30 for too many days, and I'm very crotchety and unhappy, and I'm like, you know what? I think this is just about you wanting to meet that deadline, or look like you're competent, or whatever it is. It has nothing to do with this is a beneficial project anymore. I've kind of gone off the cliff. Yeah. Or early times when I first started doing retreat here too, I kind of took all the breaks to like do my offering service thing, and I was just such a tight and unhappy person, and everybody in the community was trying to tell me to relax, and I'd be like, I'm doing my work, go away. Yeah. Not productive. Yeah. Okay, you can talk about it. All right. It was good. I think there was a point where a lot of people were concerned, I think, and Venerable Children actually told all of you, just let her run herself off the cliff. You've got to learn the hard way for yourself, When is it virtue? When is it just total crazed affliction that's keeping you going and doing pointless things? And the humility of remembering you have limited capacity, right? Like, we are in retreat, people. This is not the time to start a new project, right? So that's been my learning around this. It's still really difficult. So what about you? What are some tips you have for me? Oh, Venerable Lamsel, go ahead.
I think that coming back to is the mind settled? Like, even if I'm tired or I'm choosing to spend my flex day to do some service, it's like, if I really have my motivation somewhat in check and see the purpose and the benefit for others, and I can quite joyfully offer it. And then at the end, be like, I'm really happy that I use my time in this way because it's very beneficial, and my mind is at ease. Whereas if it's caught up in reputation or maybe resentment that I have to do this, or then my mind is tight and unhappy and unsettled, and that's the indication that my motivation was crappy.
So for me, it's been a process where I notice that my motivation is mixed, and at first I would get down on myself about that, or it's wrong, or that kind of thing, and of course that doesn't work. So I started accepting that's where I am, and the wonderful thing about acceptance is that it opens some space then. So then I accept that I have a mixed motivation, and then I have the bandwidth and space to then turn that. Because where is the rule that says if you start out with a motivation, you have to stick with it, even when you see that it is not so beneficial? I mean, that's what we hold on to, but there's no rule that says that. So then I turn it to a motivation that is supportive of me and virtuous, and then go from there. And over time then, the mixed motivation is much less, although depending on where my mind is, sometimes it's there, but it's okay, because I'm an ordinary person, and I'm still getting things done, and then after that, I certainly can rejoice in what I've done. So there's some virtue there. Good enough, dear.
Thank you. I think it helps me a lot, especially with these, far-reaching attitudes. If I start out being like, it's got to be 100% pure, I'm not going to get myself even to start, right? Like, that's just not a realistic perspective. Yeah, so to instead recognize it's going to get mixed up along the way, or the afflictions are going to come. Especially if we're doing a project over a long period of time, or like we're living the rest of our lives here. Things keep changing. Even as a layperson, I remember talking to Venerable Children about this, I'm like, I'm teaching in public school, it's very obvious that I'm doing good. Why do I burn out? Why does it get so hard? And she talked about how, you can start out with a very virtuous, good motivation. Like, I'm here to benefit these children. And then your afflictions get in the way, right? This boss is a total nut job, right? It's like, "Ugh." And the anger gets in there. Now we're competing. I'm fighting with him. All my energy gets caught up in other things. Yeah, and then she was just reminding me throughout that whole process, you have to keep coming back to your virtuous motivation. It's not something you set at the beginning and forget about, right? But it's easy for me to forget, for sure, especially when doing things that take a while to accomplish. Yeah. Yes, Venerable Chuni.
One of the things that it sounds funny now, one of the things that I found super, super helpful, and I don't know how I recognized this somewhere along the line, but maybe it was in looking at the ways, the 6 factors that bring up an affliction. Because what I recognized is that I have a deep mental habit of saying, this is too hard, I quit. And, in an early part of my life, I could just walk away. If it was fun and easy and I could do it, and I could do a lot of things. So when I came up against something that I couldn't do, it's like, okay, fine, I'll go to this, right? So that was not a helpful, it could have been a very helpful, personal trait, but it actually was not to have that. So to get used to the idea that, oh my God, I just want to quit, and I can catch it and go, that is just your bad habit. You don't have to follow this anymore. It's super, super helpful. Does it make it joyful? Not yet. But does it make me not go to that discouraged mind? It's just, it's stupid. It's irrelevant. It's useless. And it's usually not true. I mean, it's almost always not true. So the other thing that I do to drive it, and this does help my joyous effort, is I said this the other day about something. I write letters to the Buddha. I write the commitment. I will do this with joy. I offer this Buddha hall, my part of the Buddha hall, to my teacher, or the things that look really big and overwhelming. Where are we going to get millions and millions of dollars? It's amount unknown. I don't know. But the letter was there, and whenever I feel a slump, I go back to my letter. I find it really helpful.
Venerable Pema.
One of the things that it helps me to keep going is not wanting to, part of when you cannot finish things, and then how do I treat it like a marathon where I space it out and break it out into smaller pieces so that it doesn't look overwhelming, and that there is for me, there's a very natural kind of the aversion to not finishing things. It's not a habit that I want to cultivate. So when there's something that's, I start and then it gets kind of slightly bigger than what I thought it was, then I start breaking it down to smaller chunks, so that I can do one piece and see it as completed, but keep the whole thing in mind.
So I think we're getting into discouragement and some of the really helpful antidotes to that. And I think it's always conjoined with wisdom here. Like you said, seeing, okay, this is just an affliction or an old habit that's not realistic. Seeing, what's the karmic result of not finishing virtuous activities? It's not a positive one. So let's make sure I follow through and I keep cultivating joyous effort that way. And then what can I realistically do in specific chunks of time, right? Based on my current capacity, how do I break it up into pieces to keep myself going? Yeah. So for sure, I think, the wisdom mind here conjoined with joyous helps our joyous effort. And before we delve deeper into discouragement, I just wanted to point out some of the antidotes to the attachment to meaningless activities, right? As Venerable Lamsal and Venerable Jigme so rightly pointed out, it's like catching what our motivation is, coming back to a Dharma motivation, reminding ourselves of that within our present capacity. Here it also, in the Lama Tsongkhapa's text, I think, or maybe during the reviews when Venerable Sangye Khadro was teaching, maybe this is from the oral teachings, it said to reflect on the results of worldly versus Dharma activities. So again, this is a meditation we do all the time in the Lamrim. We're meditating on the 8 worldly concerns, right? What happens when we follow them, and what happens when we're free of them? So again, another point of relief for myself, okay, if we really do our first scope meditations strongly, it does help us to, it's a powerful antidote to these 2 types of laziness. And I don't know about you, but for me, this was doing this reflection on the results of worldly versus Dharma activities was what helped me to get ordained, I will say. Venerable Children told me to think deeply about, all the things you care about in your lay life, and if you played that out and what the result would be at the end of your life versus if you tried to pursue a different path as a monastic. And I spent a long time thinking about that and kind of writing it out. And my conclusion was, I don't think getting married and having children or starting a theater company is going to bring long-lasting happiness. Right? In fact, I'm going to create a lot of non-virtue along the way. Yeah. So even that, that's the big picture level, but I'm sure we can do that on the day-to-day level. Like you said, if I push any further, I'm going to be a very unpleasant person to be around. Why don't I just stop right now? Yeah. I live with other people. Let's be kind to them. Okay. Anything else about attachment to meaningless activities as the second kind of laziness before we take some time with discouragement?
I think you'd already started on this, but we kind of got in a different direction. But how our offering service here is joyous, or how it becomes also a meaningless activity, is to be super careful about how we're thinking about it. As soon as we start resenting it, it doesn't matter how good it is or how important it is. This is no longer a virtuous activity, right? So to kind of hold that in mind, I think is helpful too.
Yeah, that's like a giant topic for another talk someday for other people to give. Or just because when I first moved here, we just bring so much of our worldly conceptions into everything we do, right? But we're not working for profit or loss. It's like really weird in a monastery, I will say. It really comes down to your virtuous motivation. Like I really saw this when I found myself getting irritated with volunteers. I'm sorry, people who are watching, but that's like really a problem in my mind, right? It's like they're not delivering what they promised. I'm like, they're volunteers. They're coming out of the kindness of their heart. People have lives. They just want to give something, but it's my mind that's so result and product oriented, right? It's like, oh, incapable person on team. It's like, what am I? It was so gross, but to see that's my conditioning, like coming from the working world at first, like, all right, who's on the team? Can they deliver? Yeah, like we have this deadline, we want to get this done. It's like, no, these are volunteers. My job is to like rejoice in their virtue, create opportunities to make merit. Doesn't matter if it's going to take 2 extra years because, the point is that people make merit. Yeah, so it was a huge paradigm shift for me, whether working with volunteers or with myself. It's like, no, you didn't fail. It comes back to your motivation and what you're contributing. Yeah, people will still eat what you cooked, even if the first few times it's like, I don't know what this is. I had a good motivation. I can promise you that, right? So in all the different areas that we offer service in, to catch those scary worldly minds, that pervert everything and really make ourselves and everybody else that we're collaborating with very unhappy. Yeah. Okay. So next, just spending some time on discouragement, right? Venerable Deki brought up that this mind that just thinks, how could I ever do that? It's too big, it's too much. And Lama Tsongkhapa points out 3 types of discouragement we face in our spiritual practice, right? Thinking that the goal is unattainable, right? The excellent qualities of a Buddha are limitless, I cannot attain them, right? Or thinking the method is too difficult, right? The goal's too difficult, the method is too difficult. Sechen asking that question, I still remember. We have to give away our arms, our legs, and the like. Like, no way. Right? How am I going to do that? It's too hard. And then the whole process is too difficult, right? You have to keep coming back to samsara, taking infinite rebirth in cyclic existence. I'm going to be harmed repeatedly. I don't want to do this. Yeah. Right. So some of the antidotes folks have already brought up, right? Remembering that that's just a habitual affliction. It's not true. Remembering and rejoicing in things we do accomplish, like you said, no matter what it is, however mixed the motivation, I have accomplished this. Yeah. So from scripture, the first one, remembering that the Buddha wasn't always a Buddha, right? Remembering that he was just an ordinary being like us once upon a time. All of us have Buddha nature. What helps me a lot is also Venerable Children, who says, would the Buddha lie? You know, often when I get into this discouraged mind, like, I can't do it, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, the Buddha said all of us can attain the same state. Yeah. Would he lie to us? Like, are you saying the Buddha is lying? I'm like, no, I'm not. Okay, rethink. I'm going to read this thing from that Venerable Sangye Khadro said regarding our discouragement about the method. Yeah, giving away arms, legs is difficult. And she said this beautiful thing where she just, whatever hardships or difficulties we face in our life here in the Abbey or in our life in general, right, instead of letting yourself get discouraged by this and feeling, oh, this is too much, I don't want to deal with this, see this as, oh, this is the chance to practice the Dharma and get closer to awakening. Yeah. So she's just reminding us, any hardship we face now, instead of nourishing that old habitual discouraged mind, we can use that as the method. Oh, I can start right here, right now, with this, whatever thing it is that I'm having a lot of resistance around. This is where my practice is. Yeah. And we can also, I don't know if this came up in the class. For me, I make a lot of prayers and aspirations personally. You know, like, okay, I really don't think this is something I can do by myself alone right now, but, you know, someday, hopefully, and I know that help will come. I will say a big piece was learning to trust in the kindness of others. Yeah, not just appreciate it, but to trust in the kindness of others. And that's something Venerable Jigme reminded me a lot of when I first started moving here, you know, where it was back to the same thing I had about, like, you know, volunteers say they would do this and they're not doing it. She said, trust that people are kind. Yeah, people want to give. You need help, you ask for it, it will come. And that was also a big learning piece for me. Yeah, trusting in the kindness of others. Yeah, and then for the third kind of discouragement, right, thinking, oh my goodness, we have to keep coming back to samsara, it's going to be so hard. Bodhisattvas don't create causes for physical and mental suffering, so knowing that when we get there, it won't be a painful, onerous experience. So, anything folks wanted to add about things that help you to overcome discouragement? Venerable Jigme.
So for me, I use the last of the discouragement points, and can you read it again?
Is it the one that, you know, you have to keep coming back to samsara, you're just going to be reborn infinitely, it's going to be so painful?
Yeah. Yeah. So that, to me, that is kind of my discouraged mind. That's what it sounds like. And so I use this method of doing micro, macro. I don't know how else to say it. So internally, I'm having distress. Turn that. Externally, I don't know when my attainments will come. Why am I bothered with that? You know, like Venerable says, be content to create the causes. So I go inward and I work on that. So I say things like, okay, dear, you want to have a really lousy day and think that nothing's going to go well. Okay, you've practiced that before. How's that work for you? And all I have to do is just remind myself that, and it's like, oh, drop that, you know. So it's like, it's my responsibility. I get to change that. It's me. And then externally it is, I have no idea. But the ride so far has been quite wonderful. And if I practice as I am taught, things change in a good way. What's the problem? So like that.
That's such a nice example of using your own words to make that resonate for you. Because the way I hear it from Venerable Children, right, she always says, well, what else are you going to do in cyclic existence, right? She's like, other than generate bodhicitta, because we've done everything else. We've been here like for eons and eons. If you want to continue like this, fair game, go ahead. Or do you want to try something different for a change? Even if it sounds super hard, generating bodhicitta might help you get out, right? I don't know. Often they're like, what else are you going to do in cyclic existence? Sit on the beach again? Yeah, yes. Like, well, look where that got us. A sunburn, right? So, yeah, for sure. Venerable Pema.
to counteract this discouragement, a big part for me is the Buddha nature, contemplating the analogies. And I love those, the jewel in the garbage and that kind of your armor of that. So those images are very powerful for me, and like when I digest them, it comes like a visual. Then it's quite easy to. And what has been really helpful for me was just learning the philosophy. As you learn definitions, for me definitions is like fun. And you learn definition, I start to peel the afflictions. Like it becomes very impersonal, and then it doesn't look like it's me anymore. So when the mind of discouragement comes, it's always this. The whole focus is very small, and the whole thing you are kind of fixed on something, and you haven't seen a big picture. And when Lachelle was here, she taught those techniques of where you get bigger than whatever is the problem. So mentally, the mind gets bigger. Just so many techniques but those analogies of bodhicitta, of those metaphors that's used in the text is, for me, it's very helpful. And if I'm familiar with them, then they come automatically.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, but that's so important. Yeah, how these textual things, if we bring them into our practice, really help. Seichen?
Venerable, my discouragement tends to come in the form of cynicism, where I don't believe that the goal is even going to be that great. I'm like, okay, so then you get to enlightenment and you find it sucks too. It's awful. I don't like thinking that way. So one of the ways that I try to combat this is to really lean on something that I feel very sincere about and build on that. And another big thing is rooting sarcasm out of my sense of humor. This is an ongoing process, but I found it has been incredibly helpful.
Thank you. It's so funny, when my fellow Anagarika back in Anagarika days, I remember he had a sign on his hand that said, it had an S in there with a cancel, no S. And I'm like, what is that? He's like, I'm trying to stop being sarcastic. No sarcasm. Because underlying cynicism and sarcasm is anger. Yep, our good old friend. For sure, my cynicism comes up. Initially, when I was studying the tenet systems, it was like, the highest view is that one. Yeah, there's always a highest view, and they always want you to believe their view is the highest, and denigrate all the other schools. It took a long, but studying, right, holding and realizing, this is not about rah-rah for the prasangikas, they don't need it, right? The way we study tenets is just, they always say, apply the view that is most helpful for you. And that's the one you need now. And if it's not the prasangika view, you need to apply something else for where you are now. That's how you're using these teachings. Yeah, that took a long time for me to get my head around. Yeah. So far I don't think we've had any Buddha get there and then write the sutra of they didn't tell it was not what it was all cracked out to be. So I think so far we're all right. There was like, I hope that one wasn't orally transmitted. The other ones, they lied. And it wasn't. You put yourself through this for 3 countless great eons, and it really wasn't worth it. I'm telling you now. So far, no, we haven't heard that. I have a note to myself here about make prayers and aspirations. Because, when I first heard the story of the Buddha giving away his body and all that, I did not find it discouraging. I actually went to Bodha. Was it Bodha? Oh, no, I can't remember the name. It was called Namo Buddha. I think I was at the Kopan course in Nepal, and there was a kind of day trip to the place where the Buddha had given away his body to the tigress, right, Nama Buddha. And of course, there was a kind of slightly cheesy-looking diorama of the tigers that did not look like tigers. But I was so inspired by that place, and I remember making all these strong prayers there, like, oh, I hope I can do the same. I'm going to give away my body someday, not now, but, Yeah, so it was just yeah, it was joyful, I will say. Not now. Yeah, but we'll see. Okay. All right. Well, I think we have 5 minutes left, and I'm just going to touch very briefly on the last piece of the perfection of joyous effort, which is relying on favorable conditions. So this, again, is also sounds like a very abstract piece, and we don't have time to discuss it, but you can go back and look at this on your own. It's just a reminder that other than thinking about the benefits of joyous effort, looking at the faults of laziness, right, and all the antidotes to laziness, we can also rely on favorable mental conditions, right? So here we talk about the 4 powers, the first being the power of aspiration. So we meditate on causes and effects so that we generate the aspiration to discard negative behaviors and adopt beneficial ones. Yeah. But again, just reading this, I'm like, oh, if you do the meditation on karma, kind of takes care of that, right? Like, oh, the 10 virtuous actions, overcoming the non-virtuous actions. Yeah, taken care of there. The power of fortitude, here referring to steadfastness or self-confidence. So, and it's the wisdom mind here, right? To investigate what we're about to undertake, and then knowing that we can do it, then we commit to doing it. So I guess that's why they call them sharp faculty bodhisattvas, right? They've really done the investigation. They're like, oh, it is possible to realize emptiness, and it is possible to accomplish the path. We're not going to get to the end of it and be like, what? So they've done that. Then they're like, all right, I'll make this strong commitment, right? So it's okay. I think we could take our time to investigate, just not too long, because we've already been investigating for eons and we're still here. And then the power of joy, being joyful about creating virtue, benefiting sentient beings, making that part of our practice. Venerable always tells us to rejoice at the end of the day, no matter what, remembering what have we done today that was worthwhile, rejoice. I don't know about you, that's a very hard practice for me. Yeah, it took some time to like commit to that or get used to it, to be like, no, this is good enough, let's stop here. We've used our time well, hooray. We don't need to like stay up an extra hour or whatever it is to push, yeah. And yes, the most important one, rest and relinquishment, right? So reminding ourselves to rest when our body and mind are worn out, owing to our joyous effort. I like this part in the definition. We're worn out owing to joyous effort, not because we spend a lot of time eating ice cream or whatever it is that or I guess we're exhausted from spinning in our anger, right? So yeah, or following our attachment, yeah. So no, here we are worn out because we've really used our body and mind to accomplish virtue, right? We worked hard, so we know that we need to rejuvenate, rest, so that we can continue on the path. And it's a very, very long one, as we know. Okay. So I think that takes us to the end of our time. Did anyone have anything to add? Any final thoughts, comments on this topic before we close? Oh, Venerable Lamsel and then Venerable Dechen.
I was thinking that I find that sometimes I distract myself and get the laziness of busy activities is when I'm tired. Is that I need my mind or my body is kind of at a limit, and I actually need to rest, but I'm pushing, and so as opposed to doing something virtuous that would take too much energy or focus, I'll just flick on something, or I'll distract myself in some meaningless activity because it's more easy and I can kind of like zone out. And just noticing that more, it's like, actually, maybe just go and rest. Take a walk, to do something that keeps your mind in virtue. It doesn't matter if you're accomplishing anything or not, but to kind of noticing that pattern that I'll go into worldly distraction when I actually just need to rest.
Thank you, yep. I can definitely say the same for myself. Oh, you got it.
I remind myself at times that it's not a race.
Mm-hmm. Right. First to Buddhahood, woo! Rest of it too bad. Right? Yeah, it's not a race. Yeah, so just to see the afflictions, we're just so conditioned to them. Yeah, and it's a totally worldly view, and the whole worldview of becoming a Buddha is the total opposite. Yeah, but when we can tap into that worldview, everything just, naturally flows. I'm just remembering how all of us were rejoicing in joyous effort, how it makes everything so much easier and brings joy to everyone around us. Cool. So let's just take a moment to bring ourselves back inward to settle our minds and rejoice in our discussion and our time together this morning. And with this mind of joyous effort, we'll dedicate the merit. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, and that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Okay, thank you.